The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. This could be the aspiring advertising professional breaking into their first job, the mid-level professional looking to break through and find that next promotion, or even marketing professionals looking to break in and figure out who their next agency partner might be. And in this episode, we share the story of Elena Knox. Elena is an ECD, that's Executive Creative Director at BBDO New York. And she shares an inspiring journey. It's so refreshing to hear a fun story like this. From starting as a receptionist at Mullen to holding creative roles at prestigious agencies like Wieden+Kennedy Amsterdam, Droga 5, Crispin Porter and Bagussi, SSK, and Havas Action. Elena recounts a bold move she pulled early in her career. She hung a sign, a 6-foot sign, in her CCO's office to land her first copywriting role, a testament to her creativity and persistence. Could you imagine writing something like this and putting it in the boss's desk to pivot to a new role? Well, she'll talk about that, but she'll also talk about behind the scenes insights from a Huggies Super Bowl campaign, which she worked on at Droga 5. That was a big moment in her career. You're going to love what Elena says, how she balances life. We get pretty deep on work-life balance and the pressures of the ad industry, and now she's navigating it and doing a pretty damn good job. You're going to want to connect with Elena. To do that, shoot her a note on LinkedIn or listen to the end of this podcast and see if she has another way to do it. Or if you follow us on LinkedIn, Breaking Entering Media, and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and shoot us a message, we'll do our very best to try to connect you with any of our past guests. I'm excited for you all to listen. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering an Advertising podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Elena Knox, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. How are you doing today?
So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Where are you calling in from?
From Cobble Hill in Brooklyn, on Halloween Day, actually. I know we shouldn't date these things, but the kids are trick-or-treating. It's a fun day in New York City.
Yes, it is. It's beautiful weather out today. So I'm in the East Village, so I don't know where that is in proximity to Cobble Hill, as I've just moved here 2 months ago, but I'm still learning.
Oh, nice. Very nice and close. We're both on the F. You just have the best food in town, and, we're working on it.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. I got to get out more. But I'm excited to talk with you today because you are an ECD. For the folks that need to know, that is an Executive Creative Director at BBDO New York. And that is a big title at a big agency, and I'm sure you're going to be doing big things. And I also understand that you just moved about 2 months ago to this position. Is that correct?
Indeed. I came from Wieden+Kennedy in Amsterdam, which was awesome. Actually, truthfully, I was freelancing for a few months, but I was just living in Amsterdam as a CD at Wieden.
Wow. And then I see you got some other amazing agencies in your past. Of course, we see before Wieden, you're at Droga, SSK. I see a little Havas action. I was at Havas before this. Crispin, you got some great stuff here. So my goal is to learn about you, what you're up to today, what the future in your role is. Then also kicking it back to how you broke in. And what advice do you have for the aspiring advertisers, junior advertisers, anybody that wants to be in this industry? Your best learnings, maybe some mistakes you made, maybe some major successes you made. How does that sound?
Yeah, killer. Let's do it.
Cool. Then let's start off right at the top here. What does it look like to be, or what's the vibe like today being an Executive Creative Director at BBDO New York? What drew you there? What clients are you on? Can you paint us that picture?
Yeah. Um, I would say BBDO is really exciting right now. I mean, I don't think there's an agency in the industry that hasn't felt the post-COVID life. We all know what the industry feels like right now. It feels like we're still finding our feet, but I have to say, like, I'm a believer in advertising. I'm a believer in the need for it and how it moves the economy. And I think there's a lot of talk around like how the industry is dead, but I really don't feel that way. And I feel really energized that the talent at BBDO does feel like the good work is there up for grabs. There's a lot of talent in that building. There's also a lot of new creative leadership. Obviously, Chris Beresford Hill, Nancy Reyes, Gia, who's the new CEO. I mean, so many people that I've followed throughout, their careers and seen what they've done and how they've changed places. So I feel really stoked to have been invited to be a part of that change. And the reason I took the job at BBDO is honestly because that it's just such a legacy agency. I've always dug the work that they did, and I feel like BBDO never did work that felt too cerebral or too like wacky for what it was. Like I've always thought that their work was smart. We all know Snickers, the insight into Snickers and the execution into Snickers over the last 15 years of You're Not You When You're Hungry has always been so smart. And I think a lot of work follows that smartness and that wit. And I wanted to be a part of it. And I felt like it just aligned with the tone and the kind of work that I like to do.
Okay, we like that. I think the legacy and the history of the smart work that's not too cerebral, but like good strategy. It sounds like paired with
Yeah.
creativity as a brand that credibility drew you to it. But then also you mentioned the people, which is so crucial
Yeah,
because these agency names stay the same. People move around, every couple of years, it seems like.
exactly.
So you mentioned like CBH and Nancy Reyes. Is that correct?
Yeah,
That's
totally.
awesome. And they've obviously, and I think that's like the big lesson that I've been trying to tell aspiring advertisers. You have to find the people and the work, the people that you want to work with. And that's so important rather
Totally.
than like the name.
But also the people you want to learn from.
Hmm.
Like those guys just I think Chris and Nancy, I've only been at BBDO for a short while, so we're all still getting to know each other, but those guys have a lot of integrity and they're just really smart. And from what I can see, kind of an unflappable optimism, which I think is just so important. The truth is that this gig, like, I love this job. I've never been jaded on it. I love being a writer, but I don't live and die by it. Like, I don't think it's a huge part of my identity like it was once. And having that separation from it and being like, this is a job and it should be fun. And yes, we should do impactful work. And yes, we should do things that get talked about in culture because as creatives, these things fulfill us. But um, I think for a lot of my career, the pressure I put on myself and really missed out on fun is something I'm trying to bring into this new role. I feel like I really took a left turn on a different question.
What, what,
But I think Chris wants to have fun at work, and I think he
yeah.
wants to win. And I really like that, and that's an easy thing for me to get on board with. And I think the agency really has the ingredients to do so.
When did that switch happen for you? Because it's definitely a part of my identity talking about ads all the time. It's my job.
Yeah.
And I felt that pressure. I still feel that pressure. When did you realize like it's not everything essentially? Like there can be some
Yeah.
separation between who you are and what you do.
Well, I've worked at 6 shops. And actually, while I was at Wieden, I started working with an executive career coach in Amsterdam. And the reason I started working with him was because I started realizing or kind of reflecting on all the places I'd worked at and kind of noticing like how I had shifted myself to fit in. And we always talk about like, it's such a thing now to say like we want you to show up as your authentic self. I think there's a lot of smart literature around, well, it is a workplace, like maybe 95%, like we do
Yeah,
have to bring a level of professionalism.
right.
But I did feel like I was like Am I working too hard to be a part of Wieden? Like I worked really hard to be a part of Droga. Like I worked really hard to be a part of Crispin. Like, is that something I've been doing? And like, who am I really like without these jobs? And actually, my husband pointed out that if people ask me like who am I, what I do, like the first thing I would say was that I was a creative director or creative in advertising. And I started to not like that about myself and kind of just say like I am so much bigger than this. And obviously I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm all these other things. But I reached out for help and I worked with this executive coach who was just like, let's find out who you are regardless of the environment and you're in. Let's create inner security. And I feel really sound and safe now having done that work with this coach walking into this role at BBDO.
Damn. I got to call up that coach. What would you say to somebody that's just starting out in this industry then? Where we
Yeah.
talk about it's hard to break into, you have to work hard and get noticed and keep, go
Yeah.
beyond the brief and come up with proactive ideas, stay up late. Like these are things that are, talked about to
Yeah.
advance early on. So how do you balance that out? Or what would you say to your younger self if you could talk to a young Elena just getting into this business? What would you say to her?
It's so hard because the tension point when you ask someone in leadership this question is that we all had to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah, yeah.
but we now know that maybe having all this pressure on you really kind of sucks the joy out of the job. So what I would say is to over index on the holy shit, my TV commercial is on at 4 p.m. on NBC. Like I still have that feeling. Like when I see a board out that, someone on the team wrote, I'm like, holy shit, like look at all these people walking by this board that we wrote. Like never lose the awe and wonder of that is what I would tell myself. I think I did for a little bit because I was just so focused on growing and do I have the work in my book that's going to get me to the next level? Um, Here's a shorter answer. If you really believe that you're a good creative and you have to know this internally that you know how to do this thing, you will get there. I've worked at agencies that are really good, some that are have made okay work. No, like the career path hasn't like really been affected by the name on the door, essentially. It's been affected by the work that I've been able to do at each one of those places. And honestly, sometimes it's good to be a big fish in a small pond, especially when you're young.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't be discouraged that you're not working at the amazing agencies of the world that we're all jealous of working at. Like, I have so many friends who have done incredible award winning work at, quote unquote, less sexy agencies, but I really just think there's opportunity everywhere.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. That's good to hear. Um, but yeah, I get worried about, when we preach that you have to work really hard and, we
yeah,
forget that this is a fun industry and yeah, like not losing sight that we're creating stuff that people see. And I get excited when somebody I interview and an ad is on and I know they made that ad. And I'm like, I'll point like,
yeah,
oh, I talked to the person that made that ad.
yeah.
Like, even though I'm not
It's so
making it.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. The hard work thing, I didn't answer that part of the question, sorry. It it's such a tricky one because in my experience, like some people that work really hard make it through. Some people that work really hard don't. What I would actually encourage more of is just asking more questions. I love this phrase, nobody knows what they're doing. That just feels like the absolute truth. Like nobody at any level knows what they're doing. So if you're working hard because you're trying to figure something out that maybe you don't have enough context around, like just don't be afraid to ask for help, ask for context. I honestly love one of the best things about being at BBDO in the last few weeks is the amount of creatives that have walked into my office just to ask advice like this. Like, how do I get to the work I really want to be making, or like how do you hold boundaries or whatever it is. And this is something that I feel like I've talked to creatives at every agency. I don't think it's unique to BBDO. Um, I think hard work is something uh, that is necessary sometimes, but certainly not always. And if your life only revolves around the job, it'll lose its luster very quickly.
Hmm. I kind of like this idea that you're building an environment where people can ask you questions and they can be open with you. Like if I was a junior creative, I'd be very close with my creative director and balanced in that line, of not obnoxious, but developing that relationship where I can feel comfortable asking questions and really understanding the brief, or maybe with the strategist as well. I think I think it was like Abe Lincoln or something. It was like, if you give me 4 hours to
Mm,
chop down a tree, I'll spend the first three sharpening the blade, the axe,
of course.
something like that. And just
Exactly.
really,
That's great.
instead of just like spinning my wheels in the wrong direction, I think that would be
Yeah.
like my strategy. Uh, and it seems like you foster that environment to do that.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I try.
Totally. So let's kick it back then. Then how did you
Hmm.
get into this business? Or at what point did you realize you wanted to make ads for a living? Where were you in your life?
Well, I was very much on the pre-med track. So I
Oh,
took,
of course,
all
naturally.
of course, took all the APs, was applying to university in the pre-med world. And actually, the summer before I went to university, my dad had remarried someone who's a creative director in advertising, and she asked me to help her write some headlines for some billboards she was working on. And I'm from Puerto Rico, and so when I went back to Puerto Rico that Christmas, she drove me to see the boards that I had driven, and I was 17, and she was like, I think this gig is for you. Like it wasn't that you didn't break a sweat, but like it came pretty naturally, and you should look into it. And I've painted my whole life, so my dad was like, forget about the writing. You should be a graphic designer. I was like, nobody tells me what to do. I think the writing is the thing that would be fun. Even though um, English as a second language and all that stuff. So I decided my freshman year, all right, like let's switch to advertising. And My best friend, who's still my best friend, who I met first day of sophomore year, also decided to do advertising. And it's been really fun to have a buddy kind of go through this journey of the career together. So we were both ad nerds together in college, and like just having someone to foster that love of like, oh my God, we got to be copywriters one day just made a huge difference. But then, of course, I graduated in the midst of one of the country's worst financial, or the globe's financial crises. Or
Oh, yeah.
crisis. And yeah, it wasn't a good time. So the only gig I could get in Boston was to be a receptionist at Mullen, because they were moving from the woods in Wenham to the city in Boston. And so I took the receptionist job because I didn't have money for ad school. I had just gone to Boston University, and it was, it was a strain on my family for me to be able to even go there. I mean, I'm so grateful. But student loans and everything were involved. So ad school was not in the picture for me. So I took this receptionist gig kind of with the hopes that I would get into the creative department. 9 months passed by, understandably so. I would ask for briefs and they'd be like, yeah, yeah, all right. Like no one's gonna take a receptionist seriously, but really like not to the fault of anybody at Mullen. Everybody was super sweet. It wasn't really done as often. But someone I did become friends with was the head of the studio. You become friends with a lot of people at the agency when you're sitting at that desk. And he helped me design and print a sign that said, "Give your receptionist a chance," with all these famous pictures of former receptionists who did things in history. It was
Stop
like
it. I
6 feet
love that.
long. It was like 6 feet long by like 3 feet wide. And I hung it in the CCO's office at midnight. It was very dramatic, made for TV movie.
Wait, this is
Next
amazing.
day, I know. Next day, he calls me down and he's like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I'm a writer." And I had done internships all during college at agencies. I did JWT in Puerto Rico. I did a little stint at Staples headquarters, like anywhere where I could learn, and write. And he was like, all right, like I'll give you a 3 month trial. And in those 3 months, you also have to come up with a portfolio. And that CCO's name is Mark Winokur, and he really gave me a chance on my career. I had nothing to show for myself as a writer, and I really owe him a lot. And at the end of the 3 months, he hired me, and it just changed everything for me, for him taking a chance on me, and it really set the tone for my own career. Like someone giving me a chance like that, I try to pay it forward as much as possible, because it was really, the chances felt low on that working.
That's
And the rest is
incredible.
history.
That's
Mm.
incredible. So much to pick apart there, but I think what I'm curious about is after you came up with the fun idea to get with the board that you hung up in the CCO's office, and that is incredible. That takes bravery. That's awesome. And I was not briefed on how amazing this story was before this, so this is a surprise, and I'm pumped. Um,
Bravery
but
or stupidity, either or.
hey, we'll take it. Little bit of
Yeah.
both, but it obviously worked. It was smart, so probably all bravery.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
during that 3 month trial, what was going on through your head? Were you still in the receptionist role, like just like working on briefs there? Did you actually like
Mhm.
transfer over? Were people? Did you feel like you were like different because were people accepting of you during this 3 month trial? Did you work extra hard? Did you were building your portfolio as well as working on briefs? Can you elaborate on that 3 month?
Yeah. So they let me come downstairs to the creative department for those 3 months. And
Nice.
someone was covering reception. So they really committed to the try. It wasn't like do briefs on the side while you're answering phones.
That's good.
I think they knew there was really no way to do that. Like the receptionist gig was really a full-time job, and people were coming in all the time.
So they put you in it.
So they put me in it, and they put me in the creative department. And I definitely encountered equal parts of people being like, fuck, we are so happy for you that you made it to the creative department. Like, good on you. And other people who were like a little less comfortable with a receptionist working on their briefs, which again, I empathize with. It's like to give people a chance in the industry, it affects a lot of people and their work streams and their clients and like to have someone who hasn't proven themselves yet creatively kind of take a swing on something. It implicates a lot of people. So not everybody was thrilled that I was suddenly being put on, like, by the way, I was working on like shopper ads for supermarkets or banners and stuff like that, which was a big deal at the time. Like getting to work on a banner that only had my writing on it was amazing. So I would say the reception of me in the creative department was kind of equal parts really supportive and also skeptical.
Gotcha.
Um, I was really nervous during those 3 months. I was like, holy shit, like, what am I going to do to kind of impress this guy? But um, in that time, we worked on a pitch for JetBlue, and I like had a very small role in it, but the agency won the pitch. And so it was nice to kind of be a part of that story and be able to say that I helped on it.
Yeah.
I also begged an art director to help me comp things for $500, which was like basically like a whole paycheck, what it felt like, honestly.
Wait,
It really was like,
did you not have an art director partner during that trial, or were you just like in the room?
not really. I was kind of floating between people on
Hmm.
briefs, but I didn't have like a one partner. Um, And yeah, and he did, and he drew all my shit for me. It wasn't even on Photoshop because it would take too long.
Oh wow.
He
And
drew
you
it for
paid this
me, and
person?
I paid them. I paid them because I didn't like. I was like, if I don't have a portfolio, and also Mark Winokur is an art director, so I knew that like the
Oh,
just headlines wasn't going to cut it. I mean, listen, he was a CCO. Of course, he could have handled anything, but I knew I had to like really put some effort into an actual execution. And my book was printed, obviously, like back then.
hmm.
And I bought my little cover for the book. I really didn't think I was gonna get the gig. I really thought I was just gonna be like he was gonna say nice try, thanks for playing. Um, to this day, I can't even really tell you why he hired me. Like I look back at that portfolio, I'm like, this is pretty bad. Like, it wasn't like the worst work I've ever seen, but definitely really green. But it was also a time in advertising where a lot of juniors like had to do a lot of work. I feel one of the shifts in the industry now is that it's so like top heavy and senior that I don't feel like juniors get as many independent opportunities. Even like it feels more like maybe they own like there's a lot of owning of social. But I feel like back then, like juniors like had a real role in the hierarchy in terms of like independent responsibility. And I think they just needed more people to write banners and write Facebook posts and, you know, all this stuff that was hot and necessary at the time. So I think he just needed a body.
Hmm.
But yeah, he gave me a chance.
What, I mean, what do you think you did well though in that 3 month that made you stand out rather than the being
Yeah.
unsure and, you know, rather modest about it?
I off yeah, I offered to work on literally everything.
There we go.
Literally everything. Because you know, it was also a time where they would always post work on the wall. So even if you walked into a conference room to talk about a banner, but they were working on a big campaign for JetBlue or for Zappos,
You knew
I
what was
would
going
just
on.
go and I would just go write headlines or write ads or write stunts that had to do with that brief. Even if I wasn't on it, I would just kind of understand the gist of it
Hmm.
by what I saw on the wall. Yeah, I just really tried to kind of show that I could flex in my tone too. And that's still something I really care about in my portfolio. I want to be able to do humor. I want to be able to do things that feel a little more cinematic and meaningful. But yeah, I think it was just about honestly like working hard did really play into it. But
Yeah.
I was also 21, so I felt like I had the time.
Wow. Do you think that still plays today? I mean, it has to. If you see a young creative that knows every client in the agency or has a good understanding of what's going on in the agency today, and they're curious and they're volunteering, raising their hands, or I know at my past agency at Havas, they would do some open briefs where anybody could
Yeah,
submit ideas. I'm not sure if BBDO does
yeah,
that, but people that
they do.
volunteer and they're hungry, there's especially pitch work for new business. If you raise your hand for that, or even if you just submit ideas secretly, put it under the table, I think that goes a
Yeah.
long way to get noticed, or even to
Such a long
transition.
way. Such a long way. And the pitch work opportunity cannot be understated because
Hmm.
pitching is the best way to get to know everyone at the agency. But 100%, if a junior walked into my office and was like, "Hey, I know you run Saint Germain. Can I have an idea for that. Can I throw it at you?" In no world would I say no. In no world.
Right.
I was like, whatever you have time for, let's do it. And on the same coin, like I'd be like, listen, this work is actually producing, but I have another brief coming down the
Boom.
pipeline. Love to see your thinking on it. But it doing that effort and just saying like, what are you working on and can I work on it? Like, if you've got time, I mean, yeah, I'm never gonna close the door to more
Totally.
thinking.
Now, scenario: young Gino wants to be a copywriter, and I give you some ideas. Let's say I'm in BBDO and I'm whatever. I'm an account manager. I want to get in a copy role, and I go to you
Hmm.
and I give you some ideas, but they're crap.
Hmm.
What do you do in that situation?
I would say, Gino, I love that you proactively thought of ideas. This is an inherent trait that creatives have to have, which is just excitement around thinking.
Mm-hmm.
However, here is the login to Love the Work from
Mm-hmm.
Can
Yeah.
and look at the
Hey, that's
archives
a lot of
from
money.
like,
That's worth a lot of money.
I know,
So
but
that's
I
nice of
know,
you.
but a lot.
That's very gracious.
You are
Actually,
so welcome.
you should give me that login regardless. But
But really though, looking at archives,
hmm,
it's huge.
you have
It's
to.
huge. Yeah, but I've also sometimes I give that feedback to creatives and say, guys, let's look at the archives on what has worked in B2B in the activation space and what's won in the last 10 years. It changes thinking.
Hmm.
it immediately either elevates the bar or tells them like, oh, the bar is down here. Oh, then this is gonna work. You know what I mean? Like this is gonna work. Like actually, the shift doesn't have to be if we bring craft into it and something really insightful. Like we
Hmm.
don't have to shoot someone to Mars to tell our message. It can be a little more chill than that.
Gotcha.
But being inspired by past work, I think is always super helpful.
Gotcha. So you would tell me, study up. You're not ready yet. I don't hate you yet, but if you keep bothering me with bad ideas, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, potentially.
I would say the ideas are crap, study up, and then I want to see a second round.
Okay. And then I would have to lock in.
That's right. I wouldn't let you off the hook.
Gotcha. I like that. I think what I would recommend, like, if you're going to an ECD and you're very busy, you're very stressful, or your job is very stressful, I'm assuming, like maybe make sure it's a little bit more polished, make sure the ideas aren't complete trash, or is that inhibiting advice? What do you think?
It it depends what level you're at. If you're a
Hmm.
CD, I want to see you self-editing. If you're a senior creative, I want to see you self-editing because I want to know your opinion on like, we were thinking about this thing with a parrot, but actually, a flamingo is much more appropriate, and here's why. Like those are the
Hmm.
conversations I want to have at that level. But for mid and junior creatives, I want to see how wild they can go. Okay, so like here's how they answer their brief, but what's the point where I have to rein them in? And I always love creatives that need more reining in than they do like go.
Pushing.
You need to go crazier than this,
Right. Go wild, especially for student like portfolios. Like
Yeah,
this is the time where you should go wild and think big because you don't have it's spec work, right? Like there's no clients,
totally.
there's no, and it's your job to understand what how you can pull a good idea or how you can refine the idea. So not worrying too much about the creative direction of it or the managing of the idea. Just think bigger.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I also, yes, ECDs are busy, and yes, it's a big job that comes with pressures, but I have to tell you, like, in the moments in my calendar where I'm talking to people one on one about either their careers or like, can you look at this work or how do you think we can push this, whether it's a personal project or an agency assignment. It's this is such a cheesy thing to say, but it's the truth. It really is the best part of my day. Like, that's why I'm in this
Totally.
game. If you don't foster talent, we're kind of all dead in the water. Like, what are we even doing?
When you're having these conversations, um, I guess like where do you see people going wrong in their career path and like some big red flags or mistakes you see like people commonly making, like chasing the money or um I don't know, that's probably the big one, but like are there some like that you kind of consistently see and you try to steer people away from these decisions in their career as a creative that you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, chasing the money is the big one. I
Hmm.
know it really sucks to see so many talented people I've worked with in the past or I know about that chase the money and now they're having a little bit of a hard time even though I know they're really good. They just haven't had the opportunity to like work on the portfolio pieces that sustains their career. I would also say I've seen as I've grown up in the industry, I've worked with people that aren't always kind, that haven't always been kind or have been demeaning, whether it's to me or a waiter. And the thing is that this is a very young industry. It's extremely ageist. We all know this. At some point, we all tap out. It's just the way it's built right now. I hope it changes, but there there could there could be a point or a situation in your life where like your mid-level writer from 15 years ago is now your boss. Essentially, like that does happen in this
Yeah.
industry. Like
Yeah.
like when I was a mid-level writer at Crispin, I know a lot of like really talented people that are reaching out for freelance opportunities that were my bosses. and I want to hire them because they were really good to me and they really took the time to mentor me and they really cared about my career path. And there's other people that reach out where I'm like, why would you think that this would work out? Like, you weren't kind to me and yeah, it's just kind of a weird situation. So I would just say you just never know who's going to be in charge someday.
Hmm.
Especially with extremely like very very talented people. Like I always think of Felix Richter, who hired me at Droga, who's CCO at Mother in London, who really rose through the ranks very quickly, because he's absolutely brilliant. So anyway, I just think being kind,
Yeah.
to everyone is probably a smart move.
Yeah. I think, there's some times in my career already, it's like, I don't mean to be rude, but it's just like timing. Like, I can't put in the
Yeah,
effort for every conversation, and it might come off as rude because I'm juggling
yeah,
so many different things at once. I feel like sometimes I don't
totally.
give the attention everybody deserves. So that's
Mm.
like something that I need to figure out and just be more transparent. Like, if I can't dedicate that time and respect to somebody,
But
then
just
yeah.
Yeah, but you should also know that nobody knows when you're only giving 60%, only you do.
Hmm.
This is such a perception thing. Like you should protect your energy and the way you feel like you need to. You know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Appreciate that. Um,
Yeah, of course. You're
uh,
not being rude right now at all. I think you're giving me 100%. It feels
oh
great.
yeah. Oh yeah, you're getting 100% until you have to go trick or treating, of course.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Well, my real employer is my 5-year-old, so.
that's right. That's right. Um, so you got in as a copywriter at Mullen. It worked out. You were there for
Mhm.
almost 4 years. So obviously that's a
Yeah.
good amount of time in agency life. Throughout your
Hmm.
career then, as a copywriter, rising the ranks, you had multiple agencies under your belt here. So
Hmm.
big lessons, like what you tell me, like getting the job at this agency, getting this promotion, I learned this big lesson. 1 to 2 to 3 tentpole moments in your career that you want to hover on. I'll open up to you.
Oh man.
Was it like going from senior copywriter ACD or going from ACD to creative director? Because I'm curious about the Droga because I saw the Huggies Super Bowl ad. I
Hmm.
believe that you made that or
Hmm.
you were a part of that process. Where do you want to kind of
Yeah.
sit in spotlight?
Um, well, I think the Huggies thing is definitely the thing I helped work on. My partner Alyssa George and I were the CDs on that,
Okay.
and
So
the
you're at
ACDs
Droga
on it.
5. So let's set the context
Hmm.
here. You're at Droga 5, you're creative
Yeah.
director. How
Hmm.
long were you at Droga when the brief came in, and give us that context around it?
Okay. So I was at when Huggies came in. I had been at Droga for 3 years, and I still hadn't felt like I had made the thing,
Mm,
like the thing that got all the PR. That was like, the thing that you could point out and say like, oh yeah, she did that. So
right.
the truth is that I was actually on maternity leave when the agency pitched it. My partner, Alyssa George, who's fantastic, pitched it, um, with the agency and helped win it. So by the time I was back from maternity leave, they were starting campaign development. So she really did the legwork.
Okay.
And then I got to
Okay.
jump on. But the brainchildren of that campaign was really Melissa Chamorro and her partner Stacy, who were the ACDs and really the voice of the campaign, and they were absolutely brilliant. But it was huge. I mean, it was a complete rebrand. It was going in multiple markets, and that was really my first piece of truly international work, and really getting a brand to buy in into a completely new voice. I mean, it was really a lesson in jujitsu on how to sell things through to clients.
I was going to ask you, what was the hardest part of selling that through?
Yeah. Um, After doing a lot of research on the competitive set, we basically told clients that if we didn't show the absolute truth of what it was like to be a parent, the whole campaign would fall flat on its face because all baby commercials and ads would show, and with competitors were like clean living rooms with, perfect sweet babies and like no messes. And we really saw the opportunity of showing what real life looked like. And when we put the work into testing, which, is totally fair, they were doing a brand new thing, it tested really poorly when babies would cry. They were just like, we can't have this crying scene of the baby because it upsets everyone. And we really went to town with them on just making the case for like why a second and a half of a crying baby won't kill anyone, and it'll bring so much credibility to the brand.
Yes.
So that was a huge thing. And the other thing that came out of testing was that they were upset about branding. They were like, well, branding, people don't know it's us. And we were like, of course they don't know it's you. We've just completely rebranded you. Like the product showed up throughout the ads the whole time, like there was no moment in which we either weren't talking about Huggies or showing Huggies. But it was a good lesson to kind of remind brands that if you're going to take a big swing of and show up as someone else, you kind of got to feel comfortable with the numbers not showing up in your favor on that branding column right away.
Right.
Building a brand is building a table. That's just the first leg of the table.
Wow.
So
That makes
those were
sense.
big lessons on that one.
Yeah. I was curious too, then, you mentioned something important that I'm sure a lot of our people will feel, or listeners are feeling right now, this pressure to create the piece of work at an agency, like the moment.
Yep.
Like a lot of people are swelling up inside, waiting for that work to break through and go viral, or break through culture, whatever your KPIs for success are, whether it's Super Bowl or it gets in a headline in Ad Age or Ad Week. So this thing, it probably permeates a lot within the creatives listening. I guess, what advice do you have for those people that are at a good shop, or they're in a situation where they're ready to break through? What do you tell them as they're waiting, and how do you mitigate their stress there?
I would say everything you work on gets you closer to getting there. I mean, it took me 11 years to get that thing, you know? And it was frustrating because I was thinking about that the whole time. I was like, I had gotten stuff that had been, mentioned in Ad Week and gone into the press and stuff like that, but like really winning awards on, the circuit and really being known for a piece of work, it took a hot second. But looking back on it, all the things that I worked on to get to that moment really helped me excel and try to get that campaign over the line with the rest of the team, who was excellent. Juliana Cobb was the ECD on it, who now runs 72 and Sunny.
Nice.
I mean, it was just Felix Richter once told me, you get 1 in 10. 1 out of the 10 things you work on will be a shining star. It's just so many things have to work out for you to get that thing. The stars have to align, the planets have to align, just literally the longitudes and longitudes, everything in the universe has to come together for you to get that big moment. But I think a lot of people do get their moments, and I would say try to think of a creative person you admire the most. Think about what their thing is. It's usually hard to mention more than 2 or 3. 3 is a lot. I only know one creative leadership team that I'm just like, oh yeah, those guys did this and they did that and they did this and they did that. But everybody else, I'm like, oh yeah, they're known for that thing or that thing. So I would also take the pressure on having it to be the thing every time. Because I think that's another way to really lose luster on the industry, is to be upset every time you work on a campaign that doesn't get an Ad Age. I would just encourage people to feel more grateful that they're not working on an Excel sheet.
Yes.
Or doing taxes. I'm so glad I'm not doing math every day,
Same. I love that.
Yeah.
It's all relative. That makes a lot of sense. Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And then you mentioned before the call, empowering the next generation of female leaders in this industry. So wanted to bring that up. It's a topic that we want to explore more on this show. To
Mm-hmm.
the female creatives or females in this industry, I guess any lessons that you've learned in your career, or you tell them frequently when you're having conversations, how to thrive, break in or thrive. Is there anything that you want to mention on this show?
Um, just to find your mentors. The truth is that I had so many male allies growing up in this industry. I could have, so many people helped me get here, and a lot of them were men because I didn't have a female creative director in this industry until 9 years in.
Wow.
And honestly, I have to say, a lot of the ECDs at BBDO, it's really nice to see them advocating for creative women so much in meetings and whatnot. And it feels like we've come a long way as an industry because it definitely wasn't always like that. Um, but I would say find your mentors and just if I didn't have women that were more senior than me to look up to, like I'm not sure I would have, made it to this point to say like, am I crazy that I feel uncomfortable in this setting, and why does this feel weird, and all these things.
Hmm.
Um,
In the
but I would
organization
also
and
say,
outside
yeah.
the organization that you're working in, is it, or do you, what's your advice on that? Like, do they have to be at your agency?
No, they don't have to be at my agency. I still talk to a lot of people I no longer work with.
Mm.
I think if you admire someone and you've seen them get to the level that you want to get to, reach out to them and talk to them. Um, I really love it. I've met a lot of women on LinkedIn and young creatives who want advice on this kind of stuff. And it's great. Honestly, it's awesome. And I would also say don't be afraid to just say when you're uncomfortable. I really didn't have the courage to say when I was uncomfortable in a certain situation, not until I was pretty senior in the agency, whether that was people were talking about weird things that they shouldn't be talking about, or I don't know, just being weird late night at drinks. I would say that the environment is more ripe to stand up for yourself and feel like you'll have backup to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry that there was any weird situations. Hopefully it
I
wasn't.
know, I feel like I just dropped this, like making it very dramatic, but like, like I've talked to a lot of creative women. Some women haven't felt that stuff at all. Some of them have never felt disrespected. Some of them have always felt looked out for. And a lot of them hadn't. So I just, I still get the comment that you're you're a good creative for being a woman. Like, and people think this is like a compliment, or like your writing chops are impressive in like finance for being a woman. Like I had a client say that to me
Holy
pretty recently.
crap.
And again, like, like I know the intention isn't to do me harm, but I think it's just these perceptions still exist. And I just think women and mothers and honestly just people who aren't your typical creatives in creative departments, people of color, they just the stories they have to tell are so rich and I think valuable.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. You don't want any like, I feel like addressing even the smallest stuff is like important. So it doesn't build a culture
Totally.
where it's like
Yeah.
allowed, like those microaggressions and those like smaller
Yeah.
comments. Like better to start small and just like people can see that and tone for the environment to be safer. I think that's like a good call if people are
Totally.
comfortable. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, you need them to be.
totally. I love it. So, how can people reach out to you, Elena? You said that you talk with people on LinkedIn. Is LinkedIn the best way to go? I know
Yeah.
your website is elenawrites.com. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Wonderful.
Yeah, hit me
So,
up on LinkedIn. I'm good at responding.
good. Good. We like that.
Yeah.
Then I recommend people leave
Mm-hmm.
like a little note when they're
Yeah,
hitting the connect button.
totally.
Goes a long way.
The work email is a dark, deep hole that I try to get to in between meetings, but LinkedIn really is a good place, I think, to communicate and happy to talk to anybody who wants to reach out.
Perfect. Did we miss out any major things here, Elena? Feeling good?
I feel good. This is
Perfect.
fun.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on. I hope people reach out. I can't wait to check on your journey at BBDO and all the great stuff you do there. So thank you again.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Talk soon.